Yeah, sure. I'm Bill Hastings. I've been working with Icon ATG since 2006, so getting pretty close to 20 years now. I started out when PCs were new, working as an independent developer directly with business folks, and I progressed from there to developing and managing larger and larger teams as business software that all but a few could afford became a thing. I worked up from there into being a solutions and enterprise architect, and I did that for a number of years through the dot-com uh, boom and bust. And since about 2006, I've been working with Icon. I do a lot of Agile consulting, but more on the technical side. I do process consulting too, but I'm kind of the guy they go to when they need more technical kinds of help. And I also, from time to time, work as a consulting architect on usually rather large projects at big enterprises.
Great. A few housekeeping things. If you could put your questions in the Q&A window as opposed to the chat, I'll have fewer places to look to call out to Bill. But, whatever works for you all. We appreciate it.
Yeah, if we can put questions in the Q&A window, that'll help me differentiate them from the conversations you're having in chat, which I don't want to inhibit. But if you put them in the Q&A window, then at some point I'll be sure to get to them. So AI, it's the big thing, right? It's what all the C-suite executives are talking about, bragging to each other about how far they are along. We've been having a great number of conversations with people from all the way up in the C-suite, all the way down to team level about AI and how AI is going to impact development specifically, but even the larger digital innovation landscape. And we're finding that we're seeing the same kinds of questions come up and up again and again and again. If you've been involved with development and agile development for very long, you've probably heard of the State of Agile report that comes out every year. And the interesting part about that report is that the problems and obstacles that people encounter when they try to do development in general or agile development specifically aren't changing. Um, and they usually have to do with misalignment of objectives or unclear objectives and uh, lack of support from the C-suite or lack of communication or late communication. It's usually about everything but the actual coding and development that are the things that get cited that are holding people back again and again and again. And this number that you see on the screen of 70% of digital innovations failing to deliver their expected value have a lot more to do with those process and communication kinds of issues and the failure of the team and all the stakeholders around the team to share the same mental model of the value we're trying to create. um, Seems to be the bottleneck and the impediment more than the actual, sitting down and coding something itself. So in this session, we're going to look at the hot topic, which is AI. We're going to talk about how it can accelerate innovation. We're going to talk about how it can enable us to do some of the things that we've always wanted to do, like more frequent and more insightful interactions with our customers, um, uh, more frequent feedback from them, being able to do rapid prototyping, A/B testing, all of the things that we would love to be able to do, but in the past we haven't, because the level of effort and the level of friction, technical friction, has been too high to try to lift our game to that level while still meeting the time and budget constraints that we're under. So if you take anything away from this presentation today, what you really should be looking for from AI is breaking the constraints that allow you to identify, define, build, deliver solutions that your customers love, with a level of flow that we haven't been able to attain before just using manual processes. There's a QR code up here for any of you that think you might need to duck out early. If you scan that, it'll take you to a page where you can sign up to get more information about what we're talking about today. So you may want to scan it early if you think you might have to duck out before the end. I'll repeat it at the end. So what we're going to do today, the first thing we're going to do is kind of frame the opportunity. We're going to talk about AI and the fact that it's at the height of its hype cycle right now. There's a lot of wild claims being made about how transformative AI will be. Um, and like most hype cycles, it's going to go through a boom and a bust, where the initial hype probably is going to lead to um, disappointment and a misalignment of expectations before the real transformative opportunity really takes off. We've seen this before. We've seen it in the dot-com boom, where everyone believed that the web and the internet were going to transform business like tomorrow. Everyone jumped on the bandwagon and decided that the web was where you had to be, and they were right. They were just about 15 years too early. We saw the same thing with the cloud revolution and SaaS and PaaS and all of the uh, cloudy things that we thought were going to be revolutionary. And we were right. They were. But we had to go through a lot of growing pains and get over the unrealistic enthusiasm, have some of our hopes and dreams dashed a bit before we really came to grips with what the cloud was and what it was good for and how we could actually leverage it to our advantage. We're going to look at vibe coding, and we're also going to look at the entire innovation lifecycle and how, if you're just trying to use AI to write your code for you, you're going to miss a great deal of the value, and you're going to discover fairly quickly that you're going to run into a wall when you start to build applications at enterprise scale, beyond a certain size of code base, beyond a certain complexity of integration. The whole notion of vibe coding, where you just essentially have a conversation with an AI and it builds your application for you, will start to hit a wall and fall down. And we'll talk about how we can get around some of those limitations. And then finally, we'll take a deeper look at some of the details, and this will be a more interactive part of the session today. I'd like to hear from you about um, some of the obstacles that you're running into, some of the things that you have been looking at perhaps and have questions about. And I'll try to dig into some of those details and answer those questions for you to the extent that I can. Did anybody come here hoping to get something out of this presentation that I haven't mentioned yet? You can just go ahead and throw it into the chat. Okay. So here's kind of a summary of everything we're going to do. Um, we're going to talk about why we really want AI to succeed and what it's going to be good for us. We're going to look at the what, which is how can we take this shiny new technology that's evolving very, very rapidly and apply it to not only the engineering and coding part of what we do, but the entire loop from making insightful observations about what our customers need all the way back to delivering them experiences that they love, right? Where can we leverage AI in that entire process? And then we're going to talk about the how a little bit. So, how do I start to think about and engage with an end-to-end AI transformation? And how can I do that incrementally with low risk by making some strategic moves as opposed to just kind of throwing it out there in your organization and letting it grow organically? I had an old developer tell me when I first started out that whenever he hears the word organically, he thinks of the stuff he shoveled out of the off the floor of a barn when he was a kid. So there's some major trends going on right now. Um, the innovation bottleneck is shifting. So AI enablement throughout the innovation lifecycle is going to radically reduce levels of effort. It's going to eliminate a lot of the coordination overhead and collaboration overhead that we've had to deal with and try to manage, which has caused our efforts to slow down and in some cases stall. It's going to help to eliminate a lot of the technical friction. And when it does, we're going to, as with any process improvement or process optimization, as soon as we remove those bottlenecks, we're going to discover more bottlenecks, right? But the bottleneck is going to shift from these kinds of constraints that we've lived with for the last 30 plus years to the speed of observation and the efficiency of ideation. If we can observe what's valuable and really, and those observations are genuinely insightful, and we can efficiently ideate with all of the other kinds of friction removed, the efficiency and speed with which we can do those things is going to become the new bottleneck. And so that's going to have some implications for your organization and how it's structured, and even the kinds of people that you staff and the kinds of responsibilities that you give them. AI is rapidly changing the competitive landscape. Um, we now have, excuse me, companies that are generating hundreds of millions in revenue and are worth even more hundreds of millions in market cap that are 10 to 12 people total. These are AI native startups that have um, sort of grown up with this new technology and leveraged it to the hilt, and they're creating things like the granola app that has a huge market cap, is generating a ton of revenue, millions of users, and just a handful of people. That's going to make incumbents in just about every domain that we can think of more vulnerable to disruption by smaller, nimble players than they used to be. They became more vulnerable with the web revolution. They became even more vulnerable with the cloud revolution. And the AI revolution is just going to continue that trend. But the competitive moat for established players that can master these technologies quickly and apply them appropriately is going to widen. Um, Established players have some advantages that upstart disruptors don't. They have a huge installed base and customers that they can talk to and gain observations from that the new players have difficulty getting access to if they can leverage them. They have infrastructure in place that can be plugged into and integrated with AI in ways that these new upstarts won't be able to duplicate. And so if you are an incumbent, don't think that this means that it's all downside and vulnerability for you. If you can master this new wave quickly, and if you can live with the growing pains as it rapidly evolves, which it still is, you're going to establish a very large competitive advantage for yourself. We've been talking about agility since 1999. Uh, so over 25 years now. There's still a lot of people who are somewhere in their agile transformation journey. This is something that's going to become a lot more urgent in this new reality because at some point, agility will be the only sustainable competitive advantage you have left. The barriers to entry that incumbents have been used to relying on to keep to keep newcomers out of their markets are going to dissolve to a large degree. So agility is your friend. The lack of agility is going to make you vulnerable. The economics of innovation are inverting. Um, I've worked with a lot of companies, and you may work for a company or have worked with companies who are kind of riding the gravy train from an innovation or an idea that they had a decade or two ago. And they can do that because the economics are such that they favor that. The economics are going to invert where innovation is going to become cheap enough and the benefits of innovation are going to become compelling enough that writing what you did a decade ago is just not going to be a tenable strategy anymore. So I'm going to stop talking. We talked about this being beyond vibe coding. So now let's actually do some vibe coding. Let's look at what vibe coding is, how it works, talk about what its appeal is, what its limitations are, and we'll do that by vibe coding something together. So I threw up three ideas here. We can do a to-do app that manages your tasks and when they're due and that kind of thing. We could do a local weather app that gives you your local forecast and temperature and whatever other features we could think of. Or we could build a Pac-Man game. Or we can do something that you're interested in that I didn't think of. So put a 1 in chat if you'd like to do a to-do app. Okay, got a couple, 3, 4, 5. All right. Got a thumbs up. Pac-Man! Okay. Uh, so we got a few 2s, we got a couple 3s, got some 3s. So it looks like a pretty even mix between 1 and 2. So just one more time for me, put a 1 in there if you'd like to do a to-do, put a 2 in there if you'd like to do a weather app. Just not going to make it easy, are you? All right, we're pretty evenly divided. Let's do a to-do app. That's kind of the classic demo app that everybody does to demonstrate technology, right? All right. If you can, throw out a few ideas for features on this to-do app. Just just off the top of your head, doesn't have to be elaborate, just give me a sentence or two. Or we can just let the AI decide for us. Okay, delegation to team members. Okay, mark done. Pomodoro, okay. Prioritizing, color code on priority, okay. uh, Somebody wants that local weather real bad, so we'll demonstrate connecting to the National Weather Service and getting our weather. All right, let's start there. We can add some features later. So notice what's going on here. If the I forgot to ask, can you see this text? Is it big enough?
It's a little small. That's better.
How's that?
Great. What's being used to do that coding?
Uh, so the model is Claude. The tool is called Claude Code, but there's a framework on top of it that I built myself. So we got a problem with our NPM cache, but it's going to fix it for us. Now you notice that because I didn't say what I wanted, it decided on its own that it was going to build a React app with a Node.js backend. One of the things about vibe coding is that when you just do things interactively like this, you might get anything. Um, the less you specify, the more it's going to do things on its own initiative, and those things that it's doing may not uh, align very well with your corporate technology standards, with your architectural standards, with how you manage security, a lot of different things that it may do differently than you would have done if you had specified it yourself. The other thing that you'll run across if you try to vibe code like this is that these models were trained on all of the code that's accessible on the public internet. And if you go through all of the code that's accessible on the public internet, there are literally thousands of different ways to do the same thing. And unless you're very, very specific about how you want something done, i.e., you have architectural standards and design standards and coding standards and approved and not approved technology stacks and so on, you're likely not to get what you expect. Not only that, you may find that your AI changes its mind in the middle. I've had AIs decide that they didn't like the testing framework that we were using, uninstall it, and install a different one without me prompting it to do that at all. So if you're familiar with React development at all, you can see that it's building the express pieces, it's building out the routes, it's building all of the different components that you need for a React app.
There was a question, Bill, about the, well, there are three in the Q&A window. I don't know
Okay?
if we're going to go in order
Yeah, let's take
about,
a look.
yeah, thanks.
So declarative development tools like that, your low code, no code tools and things like that, you can vibe code those things. The challenge that you're going to run into is that these models were trained at a specific time in the past. And so the ways that they try to do things may not be up to the current version of the platform that you're working with. There are ways around that. We're going to talk about MCP servers in a little while and what those are for. And one of the things that you can do with an MCP server called Context 7 is that you can tell the AI to use that MCP server to go and fetch the most current documentation for the platform that you're working with. So yes, you can do it with platforms like Salesforce or any of the other uh, sort of configuration, not code type platforms, but you've got to make sure that your AI is using the most current version so that it's compatible. In the spirit of vibe coding, should we even bother about the underlying technology? Only if it matters to you. So if you're a startup and you're one of these people out there on YouTube that is vibe coding on their YouTube channel and you've never written a line of code in your life, you may be better off just letting the AI pick what it's going to use because it may make better choices than you do. But if you care about that, and especially if you're going to be more collaborative with the AI and you're going to do some of the coding yourself, or if you're in a corporate enterprise environment where you have standards for things like that, then you probably want to be more specific about the stack you're using. The framework on top of Claude Code, sure. So I added some things. Claude Code has some extension points that you can use to extend and enhance it, and I have. I've built a whole stable of custom agents that I'll show you later when we use them. I've created extension what are called slash commands, which are reusable. You can think of them like reusable prompts that you can execute over and over again so that you get consistent, or at least more consistent results from time to time. I've built in hooks that allow me to specify actions that Claude must take either before it modifies a file or after it modifies a file. So one of the ways that I make it implement TDD is I use a hook, right? I say before you write any code, uh, you've got to write a test, right? So if it has just written some code and it's moving on to the next acceptance criteria and it tries to write more code, the hook will catch it and it won't let it do it. It'll say, hey, you haven't written a test yet. So you see here that one of the things it's doing is it's componentizing the application. So it's creating a component set even though I didn't ask it to. However, the component scheme may not be what I have in mind, right? Is it easy to develop IoT mobile apps using vibe coding? Yeah, it is actually. The same sort of thing applies that applies to Salesforce. You need to make sure that it understands the framework that you're using and that the documentation that it's referring to is up to date. So it's building us an authorization container. So it's putting security on it, even though we didn't ask it to. And if I tried this again, by the way, it may not do that the next time. Um, the thing you have to understand about these generative models is that they're not deterministic. They're stochastic, meaning I can I can describe the probability of what they're likely to do with statistics, but I can't predict exactly what they're going to do. Does what I'm doing require a paid subscription or service? Yes, it does. Um, and how much you use it really depends on how much you have to pay. If you're going to use it for real production work and you've got lots of lots of work to do and you're going to be using it essentially professionally full time, you're going to want a subscription that'll run you around $100 to $200 a month per seat. If you're doing it as a side project or just trying to learn, you can get a subscription that uh, will only cost you about $20 a month, but you will run into usage caps fairly quickly with that $20 subscription unless you really are just playing around with it. Okay, so it even created us a readme.md. Let's see how it did. It ran into that same cache issue and it fixed it for me. These things like caching issues and other kinds of infrastructure things, those can be real momentum killers if you're trying to uh, troubleshoot those yourself. And one of the ways that these AIs really reduce the amount of friction is that they they have a pretty good understanding of things like NPM and other package managers and installers, and they can excuse me, they can troubleshoot those things for you. So hooks are defined with scripts typically. They're either Python scripts or they're bash scripts or something similar. And the way you define the hook is that there's a configuration file that you can create. And essentially it's just saying, I've got these lifecycle events like, you know, pre pre file edit, post file edit that I can attach one of those hooks to. And every time I reach one of those lifecycle events, it's going to run the hook code that I defined for it before it actually takes the next action.
Did you answer Scott's question about the hallucinations? I apologize.
So how do you debug hallucinations when starting from an idea with the conversational details instead of technical specs? you hit one of the biggies there, Scott. A lot of times you don't realize you don't realize that it's done it until you find the bug later on, right? Um, the ways around it, um, ooh, compiled with some problems. So the way around the hallucinations is using a lot of the good engineering practices that we've been using forever. Test-driven development really helps. Um, it will write code that won't run like it just did. And if you're not using TDD, you probably won't catch it until you try to build and run like we just did. So let me go. So it gives me a login screen. It looks like it fixed those errors for us. And we're back to a login screen. So So you can see it put a health check in there for me, which is a development best practice. And it's showing that the actual service is accessible. Oh, there's my username and password. Let's see how far we got. Test user. Uh, Didn't like that. Maybe it's the ST that it doesn't like. Nope. So we just found our first problem. The reason we weren't able to log in is because the route that that retrieves our user credentials from the database was incorrect. So as you can see, it's making mistakes, right? It it is creating some code that doesn't actually work. And the vibe coding paradigm, or the vibe coding way of working, if you will, is doing what I'm doing right now. It's having a conversation. So I'm telling the AI what I want. It's building something. If there's something wrong with it, I tell it what's wrong. It attempts to fix it. And we keep going back and forth like that. So it's this iterative process, ping-ponging back and forth between me and the AI. Let's see here. Let's refresh. Okay. So, test user. And password 123. Change my password. And here we go. So it has given us my tasks. So all personal and team. I can add a task. I can set a priority. There is no team. Set a date. And I can add the task. Looks like I can edit the task. And I can delete the task. But my weather's not working. Uh, so you see what it did? It tried to use Open Weather Map, which requires an API key. And we don't have an Open Weather Map API key, but I didn't ask it to use Open Weather Map. It decided to do that on its own. So I hope that you're starting to see both the appeal and the limitations of vibe coding. The big appeal is we produced an app that is functional and we did it really fast. And if we were to iterate on this for half a day, we could come up with something that's pretty impressive. The problem is that while it looks impressive, it's not production ready. It's not anywhere near production ready. If we were to go and look at the code that it actually wrote for this app, it's just a little bit of JavaScript and HTML and CSS. It's not going to have logging or a lot of the other things that you would expect to have in a production quality application. And so you end up in that situation that we've ended up in a lot, which is our stakeholders think we're almost done because we just did a really impressive demo, but we're actually nowhere near done. And if I vibe code it like this, it's going to be making a lot of decisions for me, as you can see, not only about what technology it's using and how it's applying it, but also about the style of the code and the coding practices that it's adhering to, and all of those other things that we pay a lot of attention to as professional developers. But someone who's not technical, someone who's never written any code before, they don't know what they don't know, right? So they can build themselves an app like this, but while they may think they're completely done, they're nowhere near done. So we think we're fully functional now. Let's see. There you go. 24 degrees C feels like 24 in New York City. Let's make sure it's not fooling us. Ah, this is something else that you'll encounter with AI quite a bit. It'll tell you it's done when it's not. So obviously it has hard coded New York in its weather piece, even though it's impressive. That looks really good for just a few minutes of work, but it told us it was finished and it put something up there that's not actually finished. You're absolutely right. It was hard coded. Well, yeah, I know I'm right. Why, why did you do that in the first place? See, you're going to find that AI, if left to its own devices, is going to do a lot of things that you don't expect. And you can interactively go through one by one as you're doing kind of this user acceptance testing as you go, and you can find the issues like I'm finding them right now, but it takes you finding them. And the AI won't always be straightforward with you. I've had it tell me that I had full code coverage when I didn't have any code coverage at all. I've had it tell me that it fixed a bug when it in fact it did not. Um, so these are kind of the limitations that you run into when you have non-engineer, non-coders trying to vibe code their way uh, to real production quality working software. I know the questions to ask, and I know how to discover these things. Someone who hasn't written a lot of software probably doesn't. This is, by the way, a 40-year-old dream, right? The dream has always been business experts can write their own code and don't have to rely on the engineers for it. Um, the first tools that I encountered 30 years ago for that purpose were what they called 4GLs or fourth generation languages. Things like Clarion and Power Builder and Quartz, and there were a whole bunch of them, and they held out the the promise that you could use a WYSIWYG editor to create some forms and then put snippets of code behind the forms in order to create a real working application. And you could, um, but you ended up creating some software that was completely vendor locked. And some of those vendors went out of business after a while. You also created code that was very difficult to look at and understand and extend and maintain unless you were the guy that actually created it. And even if you did, if you hadn't touched it in 3 or 4 months, you'd be pretty much lost trying to figure out how to add new features to it. We've had a whole other wave of low code, no code in the last 10 years or so, and it's the same problem. Yes, there are low code, no code tools out there that you can use to create applications without actually doing the nitty gritty of coding, but you will end up vendor locked and you will end up with an application that's structured in such a way that it's difficult to read it and determine what it's actually doing. Vibe coding is just an extension of that old dream. I don't need coders anymore. I can just vibe code and the AI will create the application for me. And you can, um, and if it's a small application like a to-do app, personal productivity app, something like that, something that keeps track of your calorie intake and heart rate, or some little thing that you're going to throw up on an app store, probably work. But if you're doing something that is enterprise grade software, especially if it has complex integrations with other things, you're going to hit a wall. So, can we get weather in St. Louis now? Failed to fetch the weather data. So look at what it did here. Can everybody read that? It decided that it was going to limit my choices to New York, LA, Chicago, Seattle, Miami, San Francisco, Boston, or Denver. Didn't tell it to do that. It just did it. So how about our Pomodoro timer before we move on? Yeah, that's working. 5-minute break, a longer break. So that piece works all right. Any questions about what we just kind of went through? Does Vibe code work well for an existing large code base when adding new features or a bug? Yes and no. If you have a large code base and you ask the AI to go and review it, it will. In my experience, that doesn't guarantee that if you then ask it to make changes to that code base, that it will make those changes in the place where it should have or that you would expect. And the larger the code base is, the more likely you're going to run up against a wall, which is the size of the context window of the AI. So the successful way to handle that is you have to have the AI go through and document the code base, especially breaking it down into the different components or modules that are there, assuming it's well structured. Hopefully it's well structured. And then when you go to make the change, you're going to want the AI to refer back to that documentation. And you're going to want to review that documentation before you say, yes, it's complete and correct. And I can point my AI agent at it and ask it to make a change, and I can have fairly high confidence that it'll make the right change. I have had AIs decide that pieces of my code weren't necessary anymore. Why? I couldn't tell you. But they do. And unless you are in a flow state with the AI and you're using some kind of method like BDD or TDD, it can easily do things like that on you and you will not catch it. And so what you can end up with is code that it shouldn't have deleted is now gone, and code that it added that essentially does the same thing is put in a place where you wouldn't expect it. Any other questions about vibe coding before we move on?
Yes, there was one that I accidentally hit as answered live. If you go to the answered
Okay.
tab, Jian Wang asked about vibe coding quality and reliability.
Um, yeah, John, as you're kind of seeing, it can't really, if you're just doing what everybody is calling vibe coding, which is what we used to call code and fix, right? You write some code, you try to run it, it doesn't work, you go and fix it, you write some more code, doesn't work, you go and try to fix it, and you go back and forth like that, right? So as we have seen, you know, it did things like hard coding the weather location to New York when I didn't ask it to do that. Now on a smallish application like this that doesn't have that many features, um, the likelihood that you're going to catch it is pretty high. If it's a very large code base and you're doing an extensive refactoring, um, you can't just vibe code your way to large features and large refactorings. It will absolutely positively do things that you didn't want it to do and that you didn't expect. Does that help?
Hey, we had a question over in the webinar chat also. Well, I guess a few, but let's see. Um, Throwing confetti once you have a task complete. That's a good one, Grace.
Yeah, let's have it throw some confetti. That'd be good.
And then what do you need to do to get things to production?
Okay. So in order to get things to production, you essentially have to do all the things that we already know how to do in terms of structuring your development workflow and documenting your standards and following practices, good practices like the TDD workflow, coming up with detailed and explicit specifications is extremely important. Um, the more explicit you are about what you want the AI to do, the more likely it will be to do that thing correctly the first time. And that's why the sort of the test first workflows that we've always wanted to do but never seemed to have time to do, AI will reduce the amount of effort and friction that it takes to write the code or write specifications before you actually write the production code. So it'll reduce the amount of effort and the amount of technical knowledge that you have to have, um, and that will save you a tremendous amount of time.
Back to the QA window, Tom asked about demonstrating TDD with AI.
Yeah, yeah, we'll do that when we move on to the sort of the next section.
Okay, great. And then Brian asked about distinguishing between vibe coding and you guiding the app to follow some patterns.
Yeah, so um, out there in the community, you know, people are kind of split off into two different camps. There's sort of one camp that wants the vibe coding. They don't want to have to write specifications or, you know, create standards documentation or build workflows that ensure that the end product is a lot more likely to be correct, right? For example, if I had written some unit tests around our weather widget there, um, and the AI had tried to hard code New York, I mean, clearly my unit tests would have failed, right? So having those unit tests to catch when AI kind of goes off the rails and does its own thing is a lot more important. It's as important as it ever was, right? AI is going to make the same kinds of mistakes that humans tend to make because it was trained on all the mistakes we've made for the last 20 years. So there's one group that is just hoping that the AI models themselves will eventually get good enough that you can say, hey, I want a to-do app and these are the features I want, and it will just go build it and it'll be correct every time. The AI models that we have right now are not capable of that. Um, and so when you try to work in that way, you can tell the AI like what we just did, where we allowed it to work for 5, 10 minutes building this app. But then when you go through and start testing it, you're going to find things that are wrong. And when you just declaratively ask it to fix those things like I did, I have no idea how it fixed it. And you saw one instance there where I said, hey, it's hard coded to New York, the weather app. So what did it do? Instead of just hard coding New York, it hard coded a handful of cities instead. Not what I intended, but it took it on itself to do that, right?
Tom asked about maybe setting a, let's say, 1 minute timer to see what happens.
Sure. It doesn't look like it gives us the ability to set a 1 minute timer. It's just your standard 25 minutes, or I can set a break timer for 5 minutes or a long break timer for 15. Uh, let's see if we can get the AI to fix that for us. So it is doing some good things. You notice it's creating TSX components. So this widget right here, this component is an independently releasable component. It's not just one great big massive HTML file, but it's hit and miss, right? It does things right sometimes. It does things wrong sometimes.
What is the cost to come up with the test following TDD as required by vibe coding? That's what Gian is asking. Would it be lower?
What is the cost in uh,
To
AI
com-
usage or time or effort or what?
he has it in the Q&A. Let's see. The cost to come up with the test following TDD as required by vibe coding, comparing that with traditional overheads, would it be significantly lower?
A lot lower, yeah. So essentially what you're doing when you do TDD with an AI like this is you're not writing the tests yourself. You're saying here is um, the user story that I want you to code, and I want you to use TDD when you code it. So I want you to write the test first. I want you to write enough code to make it pass. I want you to refactor if necessary to improve the design, and I want you to cycle through again. And then you can go through and look at the tests that it wrote, verify that those are the tests that are the ones you expected, verify that it wrote enough tests that it covered all the corner cases and edge cases and things that you would have covered if you wrote the test yourself. And you'll find that forcing it to go through that cycle means that it's not trying to write huge blocks of code all at once. It's writing very small pieces of code that are more focused, and then it's trying to run the test. And if the test fails, it goes back and catches its mistake. So the amount of friction and effort that it takes for you to do TDD is far, far less because essentially you've gotten out of the position of being the doer and you've put yourself in the position of being the specifier and the reviewer, right? So I can go through and say, hey, I want you to build me this this Pomodoro widget, right? Um, but I want you to do it using TDD. And then you can go into the code and say, okay, that's good, but now write a test that checks for this and write a test that checks for this. And you'll catch things that it didn't catch. But the amount of effort that you're going to spend is a lot less, and the cognitive load is a lot less. One of the things that a lot of developers have a hard time with TDD is the blank sheet of paper syndrome, right? What tests should I write? Uh, Takes more effort than just going directly to, I know what I'm trying to do. I just want to write the code, right? So you can reduce the amount of effort, the amount of time, the amount of cognitive load on you if you use the AI to go through that cycle, but you have to be very explicit about wanting it to go through that cycle. Okay, so if I click on custom, I can now say 1 minute, set the timer, and start. Look at that. It even gives us a progress bar. Didn't ask for it, but it's pretty cool.
Do we have any more questions, or are you putting them in the webinar chat? Let's see. Nope.
We're good. All right. In 19 seconds, we'll move on.
Okay. Everybody grab a glass of water or whatever you can do in 10 seconds.
There we go. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but I did hear a little alarm when it ended. So yeah, it's working. This still needs to be fixed. So let's kind of move on from this a little bit. Anybody have any other questions about vibe coding, or would you like to see a little bit more of vibe coding before we move on and talk about what comes after vibe coding? Okay, moving on. If you've been around a while, you've been through a few of these, whether it's the web or whether it's low code, no code, or whether it's the cloud or whatever it is, we've all been through a number of different cycles of the technology hype cycle. It starts out when a new innovation comes out. You can probably, a lot of you probably can remember when GitHub Copilot first came out, and people thought, "Oh my God, that's magical," right? Uh, we're right now just about cresting the peak of inflated expectations when it comes to AI. There's a lot of expectation out there that you're going to be able to vibe code like what I just did, and you're going to get production quality software out the other end. And so that 40-year dream of someone with no technical background, but a lot of domain knowledge, being able to cut out the middleman and just create their own application is eventually going to crash against that reality, right? You still need to understand the fundamentals. You still need to understand good software development and engineering practices, if you want to get production grade software out of these models. So we'll hit the trough of disillusionment. We'll at some point go from AI is good for everything to AI isn't good for anything. But we'll come out of that. We'll come out the other side of that. Some people will never go through it because they didn't have the inflated expectations in the first place. They understood the technology. They understood what it was good for, what it's not good for. They understood that it is going to be profoundly transformative, but it is still in a very unstable early days state. And a lot of the unrealistic expectations that are being placed on it right now aren't going to pan out, or at least not for a long time, right? And eventually we're going to hit that plateau of productivity, which is kind of where we are with the web and with the cloud and some of these older transformative technologies that we've been working with for a long time now. Anyone could vibe code applications now. Um, the reality is, no, you're going to hit a wall beyond a certain size, and we'll talk a little bit about why in a minute. Proof of concept is very impressive. Let's deploy it. Um, the reality is that's only going to work out for you if it's going to be very lightly loaded, and security isn't an issue. Um, these models are not really good at the non-functional part of the requirements, which includes, resilience, operability, security, performance, all of those things you are not going to get from vibe coding, right? But if you're building something that to impress your friends and you want to deploy it out to a cloud server somewhere so that they can play with it, yeah, that'll work. If you've got a client base in the tens of thousands, no, it's not going to work at all. You're going to need a lot more than vibe coding to make that work. We can replace entire job categories with AI. Uh, the reality of that is the same reality that has always been, which is the only way you're going to get away with that is with very, very deep domain knowledge of how to do that job that you have broken down in such a way that you can make it repeatable, right? Especially with AIs that don't do things exactly the same way any two times in a row. Some of you are probably old enough to remember the whole wave of business process improvement, business process re-engineering, business process automation. So there was this notation language out there called BPMN, Business Process Modeling Notation, and it had a companion language called BPEL, which 15 years ago or so, people thought they were going to be able to automate entire business processes and take a lot of the humans out of the loop. Um, what they discovered was that the tools that were available at the time, things like process orchestration engines and rules engines, were just not up to the task of replicating what a real expert human in that domain could do. Now, AI has the potential to do things that those older technologies could not, but there is definitely not going to be a free lunch there. It's going to take a very, very skillful application of breaking jobs or value streams or uh, any kind of work stream down so that an AI agent can fully and deeply understand it and perform it as well as a human can. And even then, when we do reach that level where AI agents are more or less autonomous, we are still going to have to monitor them very closely and be able to alarm when what they do isn't what we expected them to do. AI was going to 10x our developer productivity. Uh, the reality is that it will appear so in the early days, but sustaining it, if you try to take this vibe coding approach, is going to be really hard. It'll seem fast, it'll seem easy, it'll seem like everybody's in flow until the code base reaches a certain size, and all of those little instances where the AI did something that you didn't expect it to do, whether it's part of initially writing the code or when it's trying to extend and enhance that code, will catch up to you.
We had a good question, like, why is it called vibe coding? That's
You
I,
know, it's kind of one of those things that someone said at a conference or in a blog post, and it just kind of took off. So the whole idea of vibe coding is that you can get into this flow state, right? Where you're interacting with the AI, it's doing things for you, it's able to crush bugs and obstacles that you're running into, so you're not screwing around at the command prompt with bash trying to figure out why npm's cache is corrupted, like what we saw when we tried to vibe code here. AI is really good at taking a lot of that friction away, right? So the whole idea of the vibe is that I'm in this state where I'm not encountering a lot of friction. I'm not pounding my fists on the keyboard because my code won't run and I can't figure out why. AI is taking a lot of that friction away, so I feel like I'm in a flow state.
and then we had a question about generative AI models. There are times when AI appears to get tired. It stops generating new ideas and gets worse the more you ask it. Is this true with vibe coding?
Oh, absolutely. So what you're describing there is what's called context rot. And that's one of the reasons that vibe coding beyond a certain size hits a wall. Claude, the model that we're using here, has a context window of around 200,000 tokens. And that sounds like a lot, but if you're heavily into coding on an application like what we were just doing, that context window is going to fill up in an hour, hour and a half, and it fills up with the entire history of what I said to the AI, what it said back to me, the code that it wrote, the commands that it ran at the terminal, all of the things that have transpired since the beginning of this session start to fill that context window up. And it's what you're encountering there is as the context window gets fuller and fuller, the actual performance of the model starts to degrade. In fact, a lot of people that are vibe coding like this regularly, they try to keep the tasks that they're doing really small if they can, because as the context window fills up, exactly what you just described happens. The model starts getting dumber and dumber. It starts making dumb mistakes that it wasn't making early on in the session, right? And but then the problem is if you stop that session and you start a new session, it's what you see on the screen here. You've got a perpetual new hire now. If you start a whole new session, you somehow have to get back into that context window, all of the domain information that it needs to know, all of the information about the code base and its structure and your coding standards and the tech stack that you're using, all of that goes away every time you clear that context window. So if I'm just building a to-do app like what we just did and I didn't fill up the context window, I feel like I'm on top of the world. But if I start trying to build something bigger, trying to manage that context gets to be pretty onerous. And like you just said, the model seems to get dumber and dumber the longer I go, right? So a few things here. So we can produce some very quick, very impressive results. You'll really impress your boss at the hackathon if you vibe code something that has a lot of features and it's well laid out and the colors are nice and it looks professional. It even has tooltips and toaster notifications and all the things you'd expect to see in a finished app. But behind the scenes, there are issues. Right? So that's that context window rot is number one. That's finite context window is why vibe coding interactive like we were just doing is going to hit a wall at some point. Then there's what's called the 70-30 problem. So you start working on a new application of whatever kind. You make a lot of rapid progress very quickly. Progress starts to slow down, as I described to you. AI-generated mistakes start to creep in. You start spending more time telling the model what's wrong with what it already did than you're spending trying to create new features and new code. Um, more and more work starts to revert back to manual as you get frustrated and you just say, the hell with it. I'll go troubleshoot it myself and fix what's wrong because I've tried 4 or 5 times now to get the AI to do it and it keeps not fixing the problem, right? So it's called the 70-30 problem because what ends up happening is AI creates about 70% of the code for you, but between fixing what it did wrong and then trying to fit the other 30% into what it did, you realize that you spent 100% of the time that you would have spent just doing it yourself. There is the perpetual new hire. In order to do high quality, meaningful work, the AI has got to understand a lot of context. It's got to understand the domain. It's got to understand your tech stack. It's got to understand the environment that it's in, any APIs that it has to integrate with. There's a lot for it to understand in order for it to write useful code. And remember that context window is only a certain size, right? So it's not like you can just sit down and vibe code for hours and hours and hours. It will run into a wall at a certain point. And the last one is AI knows too many ways of doing things. If I just sit and vibe code like what I just did, and then I go and read the code that it wrote, I'm going to find lots of different coding styles. I'm going to find that it wrote code to do the same thing 2 different ways. And then when I tell it there's a bug, it'll try to fix the wrong one. You're going to run into things like that. And the reason is if you think about creating a web app in React or AngularJS or whatever it is that you're writing it in, if you go out onto GitHub, you're going to find 1,000 different ways to do that. And about 80% of them are wrong. So, and you have to remember that these AI models were trained on all of that code and indiscriminately. They didn't go through and curate it, just say, I'm just going to cherry pick the really great code. It just trained on all the code. Now, does that mean that these things are useless and that they won't ever get better? No, they will. You're going to have to suffer through those growing pains. And you're going to have to be very, very careful about how you do what you do and apply all the things that you've learned in all of your time as a developer or a product manager or any other kind of stakeholder and not just hope that the AI is going to do it for you on autopilot, because it will create something, and it may even create something that works, but you're setting a trap for yourself. There's a lot of desire out there, especially on the part of the people on the side of the house who are always interested in cutting costs, to look at AI as a way of replacing either uh, development staff completely, or being able to get by with more junior people and not have to retain the more knowledgeable, more experienced, more expensive people. And that's really short-sighted for a lot of reasons, many of which we've just been discussing. But it's also short-sighted because they're going to miss probably 90% of the value proposition of AI in general. If you think it's just a tool for writing code, more code cheaply, you miss the boat. So with any process of doing innovation, if you think of the entire innovation process, which goes from making observations about your customer and identifying needs of theirs that are underserved, doing some ideation about how you might serve those needs, coming up with value hypotheses that you can test, running some experiments to validate whether your hypotheses about what the customer will love holds water or doesn't hold water. Moving on to deciding which of the many things that you could build is the thing that you should build by some sort of scoring and decision-making process. Doing the planning, the specifying, the building, and the delivering in order to get it into the customer's hands, and then going back into observation mode to figure out, was the thing I thought would be valuable actually valuable? And even if it was, what's the next most valuable thing I can work on now? AI could be potentially incredibly valuable at every single point in this life cycle. But just like with coding, you've got to be very artful with how you apply it and how you use it. When we move out of I'm just going to have a conversation with AI, and we move more into AI is going to do useful work on my behalf, the conversational AI is like what you have with ChatGPT, right? ChatGPT, you ask a question, you get an answer. A year ago, 18 months ago, you had a lot of people saying, write me some code that does this. ChatGPT would write that code right there in the chat window, and then they cut and paste. They were using it the same way that developers have used Stack Overflow forever, right? Go search for some code I can use instead of having to write it myself, cut and paste, test it out a little bit to see if it works, and then I ask for some more code, right? We've kind of moved beyond that. You saw with the interaction we had with the AI when we were vibe coding, we weren't just asking the AI to write a snippet of code that we could use. It wasn't doing autocomplete. It wasn't even just doing code generation. We were being pretty vague about what we wanted, and the AI was filling in a whole bunch of blanks. Not only that, it was doing a lot of things at the command line to deploy our code and stand up a development server and get it running. It was also packaging our code and making sure that all of the dependencies we needed were downloaded and installed. It was doing a lot of things on our behalf, and that's moving out of what's referred to as generative AI into agentic AI. So agentic AI is just taking the base capabilities of a large language model and giving it some extra capabilities so that it can actually do useful work for you. And there are some things that the AI needs in order to be able to do that. The first thing it's going to need is some memory. So we talked a little bit about the context window and how that context window fills up, um, and performance can start to degrade. There's also long-term memory. So long-term memory comes either in the form of documents or unstructured data that you can point the AI at and have it go read about your product definition or your business or the job that it's trying to write code to help a user do or whatever it is. That can be held in documents. It can be put in what's called vector databases. A lot of times that's referred to as RAG or retrieval augmented generation. It can be put into knowledge graphs, and that's called graph RAG. So you can take a lot of the knowledge that you need, a lot of that context that you need for the AI to have, and you can create these stores of information that it can go and refer to in order to get the context it needs to carry out your intention. After memory comes capability. There are a lot of models out there right now. There are models that are specialized in doing certain things. There are very large, very complex reasoning models that are extremely powerful, but they're also very slow and very expensive. There are smaller models that are lighter weight, very performant, but they can really only do relatively simple things. There are models that are tuned specifically to do certain things like reading an X-ray. They've been fine-tuned to do some domain-specific things like that. So choosing the right model that's going to be the optimum trade-off between speed, performance, cost, and other capabilities like multimodal, being able to interpret pictures or videos or audio, things like that, you have to choose the right model for the job. Something that people are also encountering is a lot of these frontier models that are out there like OpenAI and Claude and Gemini and some of the others, their SLAs are not quite up to snuff yet. They're still going through growing pains. They go down a lot. They become slow a lot. And if you're trying to produce something that is going to be heavily loaded in production, you may need to code fallback mechanisms that say my preference is OpenAI, but if OpenAI isn't available or if it's degraded in its performance to a certain level, I'm going to switch over to Gemini instead. Right? Persona. Something that we discovered early on with these AI models, almost by accident, is that if you ask them to take on a certain persona, it helps to focus them and do a better job in the narrow role that you've assigned to them. So you'll see things like you are an experienced React developer with heavy knowledge of data science, right? And all that's doing is it's taking this enormous model that's been trained on essentially the entire internet and saying, ignore most of that and just focus on the little piece of what you know that's pertinent to the task that I'm about to ask you to do. And that's referred to a lot of times as the system prompt. The intent or the user prompt. If you've used ChatGPT and you've asked it to go research something for you or write an essay for you, the user prompt is the thing that you put in that where you're telling the AI model what your intention is. There was a lot of discussion and buzz around prompt engineering earlier this year, 2024, where that was threatening to become a new discipline and a new profession almost that people would specialize in. It's starting to become a lot less talked about and a lot less important. People are talking more about the overall engineering of the context, which is all of these things, and not just the prompt. And then finally, tools. So in order for an AI to do any kind of useful work for you, you have to give it tools that it can use. You have to let it execute commands at the command line. You have to let it search the web. You have to let it go and review documentation on some framework that you're asking it to use. There are all kinds of tools that you can give it to let it carry out your intention. All of those things put together are the anatomy of agentic or agent-based AI. Let me pause there. Any questions about what we've just gone through?
Well, there was one about changing the code, updating it, I guess, from Yolanda.
Okay, you scroll down.
Oh, it's on the open questions Q&A.
Got it. Generative AI models. There are times when AI appears to get tired. Yeah, that's what the one we just discussed.
No, the
Yes, it,
sorry, the open tab. She said, can you change the code that you see is incorrect? This may be within the code window, or copy code and make the corrections, then upload the correct code, question mark?
you can. That's kind of going the long way around the barn. What you typically want to do is you're going to use a traditional IDE like this one. So this is Visual Studio Code. You can open your IDE in the same project directory where the AI is coding for you. And as it codes, you can see the code that it's creating. And if you want to edit any of that code, all you have to do is just open it in the text editor. You can make those changes and it won't break what the AI is doing.
And then Brian asked about intellectual property issues with sensitive data, using output in a commercial app.
Yeah, so there have been a couple of famous lawsuits that they haven't been settled yet. So the question is, if these models have been trained on essentially everybody's code that's in the public domain, um, are you plagiarizing their code essentially if you use this model? And then there's sort of the flip side of that, which is if this model, which isn't on your prem, it's up in the cloud somewhere, right? If this model is writing all of this code for you and you want that code to be your IP, how do you know that all of that code isn't being leaked up into the cloud and isn't going to be used to train the next generation of the model that you're using, right? So if you're extremely concerned about that, um, there are open source models that you can use that you can self-host so that you are in complete control of where your code goes and where your other intellectual property goes. Um, in terms of, are people going to make intellectual property claims against you? My personal opinion, having done this for 30 years, is that you're probably less likely to have a claim like that made against you than you have been for the last 20 years when your developers have been cutting and pasting code out of Stack Overflow that somebody may have pasted up there as an example when they shouldn't have, right? Um, you've almost certainly been exposed to the same problem for the last 20 years. You just didn't necessarily know about it. And if someone was going to catch you plagiarizing what they think is their intellectual property, uh, the likelihood of them catching you because you used an AI versus you used Stack Overflow probably isn't greater. How are we doing on time, Beth?
We've got about an hour and 15 minutes still.
Good. So let's look at not vibe coding. So if you're going to not vibe code, you're going to start to use agentic AI in the way that you saw me describe it in the slide that we were just looking at, which is you're going to provide all of this, right? And the way that you do that is by is in a few different ways. One way is you're going to define agents. So for example, our software architect agent here. But what you're looking at, this is probably a little bit hard to see. You're a software architect specializing in designing robust, scalable technical architectures, right? So this is the definition of an agent. This is what is called the system prompt, which we talked about in the slide previous. So one of the things that you're going to do when you stop vibe coding and start building agentic workflows that encompass your entire uh, innovation lifecycle is you're going to start to build specialized agents like this that behave in a specific way. You may have agents that are UX designers. You may have agents that are software engineers, that are architects, that are prototypers, that are ideators. You define different agents for different purposes, and you start to compose them into workflows, and they're all doing a very specialized, very specific thing. That gives you a couple of benefits. One, depending on how good you are at writing the agent definition, you can constrain the agent to doing what you want it to do rather than relying on it to do what it wants to do and then hoping that that's the right thing, right? So here you see in our design sprint ideator, I'm telling it specifically, I want you to use the design sprint 2.0 framework. I don't know how many of you are familiar with design sprint, but it's essentially a method where you start with an idea and you end with a working prototype within 4 or 5 days. So I'm telling this agent, apply this very specific methodology when you do ideation and come up with some solutions to the value propositions that we're working on, right? There's another advantage to using agents like this. Each of them comes with its own context window. So now, unlike vibe coding, where I'm essentially using one agent and one context window to try to get all of my work done, I can use multiple agents, sometimes sequentially, sometimes even in parallel, where I'll have multiple agents working at the same time, and each of them has its own context window. And if I'm good, as most of us are, at breaking down what I'm trying to do from a product definition into feature descriptions and then further down into stories, I'm able then to assign specific tasks to specific agents, and they're able to accomplish those tasks without filling up the context window and their performance starting to degrade. The other thing that I'm doing when I start not vibe coding is I start producing documentation. So here's documentation of my design system, right? So if you've got UX designers out there and they have built either style guides or design systems for you, this is the same thing. It's just produced in a way that an AI can consume as opposed to being read by a human. So when you start to get serious about using AI in your workflows, you're going to start to produce a lot of the same guidance and standards and practices and ways of using the frameworks and the tech stacks that you're using and documenting those in the same way that you would do for a new hire. Because when you start up a new AI agent, that's essentially what they are. They know how to do a lot of things. In fact, sometimes too many things, but they don't know anything about your product. They don't know anything about your domain. They don't know anything about what tech you want to use or what frameworks you're using or how you're using them and how you've chosen not to use them and so on, unless you tell it. So when you start getting serious about it and you start getting into building these agentic workflows that allow you to actually go from discovering customer value all the way to delivering it, you're building up not only these agents, but you're also providing them with the guidance they need, that entire context ring that I showed you in the slide, and you're giving them things like templates to use. So if I've got my architecture agent here, and I want that architect agent to create an architecture document, not only for me to review to ensure that it's correct and maybe make additions or modifications to it, or tell the AI to do it before I make it official, and also to be consumed by my engineering agent and any of the other agents that I build to either create or deliver the software. I can use a predefined template to ensure that I get consistent results every time. Because remember, these things are not deterministic. If you ask it to do the same thing twice in a row, it won't do it the same way twice. So the more you can give it in terms of specific guidance and specifications and system prompt and templates for the artifacts that you want it to produce, the more high quality and more consistent result you're going to get. And if you're good about things like solid principles or any other design principles, and you're good about refactoring and you understand code smells, any of that guidance that you can give to the AI, the more blanks you can fill in and give it less scope to just go do what it wants to do, the more consistent a result you're going to get and the fewer mistakes it's going to make. So let me show you just briefly what a couple of these agents do. Let me fire up. Somebody throw out an idea for a product for me. First one into the chat wins. For the pilots in the crowd, a self-flying airplane. What? So autopilot essentially?
Yeah. Yeah, just like a Tesla driving you around a plane that would
Okay.
just fly you over.
Okay. So I'm telling the AI to invoke an agent that I defined, and when it invokes this agent, it's going to tell it what my intention is. And the agent, being specialized because I've given it a lot of specialized instruction, is going to do something for me that's far more likely to be what I wanted it to do than if I had just said, "Hey, I want to build a self-flying plane." If any of you are familiar with jobs to be done theory, or jobs to be done centric innovation processes, this job map essentially is going to, in a technology neutral way, describe the job of flying an airplane from beginning to end. It describes it in a technology neutral way because then, once you have gone through the trouble of doing an analysis of what a pilot does from the time he climbs into the airplane until the time he climbs out, all of the things that he has to do, once you've gotten that description fully uh, created, you can build any number of products from it that automate either all or part of the process because you've described the job itself, not the solution that you have in mind. So rather than creating features just by brainstorming, we're first going to look at, well, what does a pilot actually do when he flies an airplane?
I guess I should have waited for someone else to chime in with Pac-Man.
Pac-Man! So while it's doing that, it's going to take it a minute. Maybe not. When you go from single agents to composing them together to start to build agentic workflows, end-to-end flows, there are some emerging standards out there that you're going to start running into. One of them is MCP, which stands for Model Context Protocol, and the other is A2A, which is essentially if I have two agents performing tasks and they need to pass messages between each other, there's a protocol that has emerged that we can start to use to allow the agents to collaborate with one another and share information back and forth, which wasn't really possible until recently. MCP servers are, you can think of them like web services, but they're really built around consumption by an AI. And one of the cool things about them is that they are self-discoverable, meaning that you don't have to explain to the AI how to use it because part of the service that it exposes is explicit instructions about how to use it, the resources that it exposes, the work that it can do on your behalf, and so on. Okay, so it has created a job map for us. Autonomous flight job map. Here we go. Here's the mission overview, the core job to be done, the target customers, what is my key innovation? In this case, three-dimensional autonomous navigation with real-time decision making, weather adaptation, seamless ATC integration for complete hands-off flight operations. So if you've been following the SAFe framework or any of the other Agile frameworks, you probably recognize this as a lot of the early product definition work that you would do before you start breaking things down into features, right? In this particular framework, it breaks down any job to be done into some universal job steps. So the first one is define what it is that you're trying to do. The second is locate the resources that you need in order to accomplish it. The third is prepare, which is I'm going to take the resources that I've located and gathered and prepare them for use. And so you can see it's describing in each one of these categories, here are the outcomes that a pilot has to achieve in order to complete this job step. Confirm that you've got everything that you need and that it's properly prepared. Actually execute the job, which is in our case, climbing into the seat, taking your hands off the stick and letting the plane fly itself. Good luck. Um, and then monitoring what's going on while you're doing it. Modifying if you need to as you go. So things like adjusting the route parameters, adapting for weather changes, responding to ATC if they're trying to communicate with you and so on. And then concluding, shut down the airplane, generating some performance analysis, uh, complete whatever documentation you need for the FAA. So it went through, did an analysis of what are all the things that a pilot would have to do in order to fly his airplane, and said, given just the product description that I gave it, this is what we would have to create in order to automate that job from end to end. Success metrics and performance indicators, risk mitigations and fail safes. So you can see it's done quite a bit of analysis for me.
Could you
Now,
define MCP? Oh,
model,
Tom did, Model Context Protocol. Okay.
model context protocol. So this, and if you are serious about this, you will develop these agents. Not only will you develop them, you will iteratively refine them to produce better and better results like this for you as you go. You'll give them better and better guidance as you learn how to use them, and you'll give them templates to use so that the next time I create a product description or a job map for a product, I'll get the same result or something that's very, very similar to the same result. So that we're we're not we're not in Kansas anymore. We're not vibe coding anymore. We're taking a very principled, serious approach to product definition and product development. The only thing that has changed is the AI is lowering the amount of effort involved and lowering the amount of friction involved. Now, this is a relatively simple agent, right? Um, but if you kind of apply it to your context where you work, and you think about all of the different stores that you may have of domain knowledge about whatever it is that your company does. If you're in aviation, you might have a lot of information about that. Um, the only tool that my agent really has is going out and searching on the web. So what it did is it went out and did some web searches and did some research to figure out exactly what does a pilot have to do to accomplish this job from end to end. Once you've started doing that, your next step is going to be chaining these agents together. So I've created a job map, but notice that this job map is solution agnostic. This is just saying what has to happen. It's not proposing any features. It's not proposing any specific technologies. It's just saying, before I do any of that, let me deeply understand what it is that the pilot has to do. And so when you get to this point and you've generated this artifact becomes the input for the next agent down the line. So what it's going to do now is take what that agent just created, and it's going to start to generate a set of feature and story descriptions that are specific to the domain that we're working in.
Yeah, Brian asked, is this akin to a journey map?
It's very akin to a journey map. Yeah. So when you're talking about the jobs to be done framework that it's using, there are essentially a few different associated kinds of jobs. So there's the core functional job, which is, in our case is flying the plane. There may be emotional or social jobs that are associated with that we would define, that are part of the overall job, but not part of the core functional job. There is also the consumption cycle. So from discovering that this product exists all the way through evaluating it, acquiring it, installing it, upgrading and maintaining it, uh, sunsetting it, and then retiring and uninstalling it. What is my overall consumption journey? And if you combine the consumption journey with the core functional job and those associated jobs, now I have a complete customer journey map, right? It's essentially the same thing. It's just coming at it with a little bit different verbiage and a little bit different perspective. So what this agent is doing is it's taking in the job map that we just created, and it's going to generate feature descriptions. In the real world, of course, you wouldn't do this. You would use the AI to generate the job map or customer journey map and personas or whatever it is that your template and your definition of the agent is. And then you would put a human in the loop to either interactively with the agent make updates, changes, deletions, interactively with the agent, or you could just go in and manually edit it yourself before you released it to the next agent down the line. And so you're composing these human in the loop agentic interactions together to build up a complete end-to-end product development innovation workflow. So you can see that it's already written 400 lines to the feature descriptions that it's about to generate. If I tried to do this in just a single context by vibe coding, I'd already be running out of context. As Yolanda said, the model would start getting dumber by now. But because each one of these agents has their own context, they get their own context window. They don't run into that limitation. We'll let that cook for a minute. So this is what I was just describing. So you're going to build up a workflow of these human in the loop agentic interactions that move you from initial vague idea through research, definition, um, analysis, through to ideation, coming up with value hypotheses, creating experiments, to test those hypotheses, perhaps doing some rapid prototyping and then doing A/B testing with actual users before moving on to choosing which version of the innovation you think is most likely to succeed, score through some sort of a scoring mechanism, whether that's weighted shortest job first or RICE or uh, opportunity scoring or whatever method for that you would use. All of this before we move on to actual writing of the code. And because AI is taking away so much of the friction and so much of the uh, effort involved, um, if you're smart, you're not thinking cost reduction, you're thinking quality improvement. You're thinking all of those things that I've always wanted to add into my workflow and do consistently because I know they're going to create higher quality and an elevated product. The reduction in friction that you're going to get from agentic workflows like this is going to allow you to do that. And the other thing it's going to allow you to do is constantly iterate on and improve on the workflow itself. So once you've defined these upstreams and downstreams and you've composed these agentic interactions together into a workflow, you can constantly be thinking about how can I reconfigure that workflow? How can I create a better agent definition? How can I create a better set of guidance or a better template or things that start to smooth out and make this innovation loop from observe, orient, decide, and act, you start spinning that wheel faster and faster, right? And as I said in one of the introductory slides, at some point, agility is going to become the only defensible competitive advantage you have left. You're going to need to be able to do this in this new world better than the other guy. You're going to need to be able to do it better, faster, more efficiently, and you're going to need to be able to get good results the first time. If you don't, you'll find yourself left behind.
There's a question for each agent in the agentic workflow, which LLM model is desirable for the particular task owned by the agents, and how is that determined?
That's a good question. So if you remember back to the slide where I described all of the things that an agent needs, one of those things is capability, right? So if you, for example, have a step in your workflow where you're telling the agent, go out and look through YouTube and find all of the YouTube videos that you can find about a certain subject, and it needs to transcribe the audio from that video. Well, there are relatively small, relatively inexpensive, but very, very capable models that can do that for you. And you'll spend a lot less money on them than you would on, say, a big model like GPT-5 or Claude Opus 4.1, and they'll actually do a better job and they'll do it faster. So every time that you're building one of these agents, you have to think about what is it specialized to do and what model is really most appropriate for uh, me to being able to do that. And there are other things that you can do within the definition of the agent, things like the level of thinking tokens that you allocate to the job. If you if you're using the model, many of them have built in keywords like think hard, ultra think, that is a clue to the model. I need to spend more time and more iterations thinking about this and not just coming up with the first one-shot answer that occurs to me, right? So if you're working on something that requires a lot of reasoning, you can actually tune the model by using those keywords to take full advantage of all of its capabilities. So we've gone from jobs to be done job map to feature definitions now. So what this agent did was it not only took the job map and derived features from it, it also did some research as best it could, because it's, again, the only tool that's available to it is web search. But if you are a leading company in your industry, you probably have databases of either structured or unstructured data that are a treasure trove of information about your domain. And you probably have uh, a an incident reporting system that where you through which you get a lot of customer feedback. Those are all things that an AI can mine to determine where is the value, right? The value is always at the place where something that's important to the customer is less than well satisfied by whatever solution they're using. Sometimes that's your solution. Sometimes it's someone else's. Sometimes it's no solution at all. Sometimes they've come up with their own homegrown solution for solving that problem, right? Um, our pilot has come up with his own solution for a self-flying plane called a rubber band that puts around the stick and holds it in place, right? Um, so what this agent is doing is it's doing an analysis and some investigation about what are the killer features that a pilot might want to use when we're talking about an app like this, right? What is going to differentiate you from the competition? What are the things that should definitely be included in your MVP, and so on? So as you're going through, you're building up this workflow where you start with an initial idea, and by the time you get ready to create some code, you've got a very, very well researched, uh, very, very well structured set of features that you want to build, and you're not just in a dialogue back and forth with the AI, uh, coming up with what you want off the cuff. Now, I will say that there is a place potentially for vibe coding in this entire workflow that I'm describing, and that place is rapid prototyping. When I've gone through all of these initial steps and I've built up all of this context, and now I'm at the point where I've come up with some value hypotheses and I want to build some high fidelity prototypes that I can put in front of my customers and say, would you interact with this for me, please? Let me watch you interact with it. Compare it to what you're doing now. Tell me if you think it's better than what you're doing, and if so, how, right? You're going to want to be able to build prototypes for that. And a lot of times, if you have enough definition around it, a prototyping agent can build you a pretty good prototype on the first shot, but you may want to use sort of that vibe coding style of interactive back and forth, knowing that this isn't code you're going to keep. These are just prototypes to get high quality user feedback earlier in the cycle than we're used to getting it. And so I'm fine with the AI doing things the way it wants to do it, as long as the interaction with the prototype will give me good information back from the user about whether I'm on the right track. Everybody got a pretty good sense of agentic workflows, what agents are, how you construct them, what they're good for, why you want them? How are we doing on time, Beth?
We have about 40 minutes.
Good deal. So we talked about MCP and A2A. These are some of the things that you'll use either to give your agents tools or to connect them to one another. So let's talk about going from where you are now to where you want to be. It's important that, as I said in the beginning, you don't want this to grow up organically. Um, you really want to establish a vision first. You want to decide in a purposeful way how hard and how deep you want to go with this. So there are folks out there like McKinsey and Boston Consulting Group who are telling CEOs right now, you need to become a quote unquote AI first or AI native organization, which means that they are going to look not only in their innovation processes, but also in their operational processes for ways to leverage AI agents like this in every way that they can. Um, that has a lot of positives, and the people that do that are definitely going to have a competitive leg up when all of this shakes out in the next 3 to 5, 7 years. Uh, they'll be maybe with an insurmountable advantage over their competition at that point. But it has some downsides. So a traditional organization spends on its technology in the high single digits, 7, 8, 9%, right? Organizations that are what they call digital native, they've gone through a digital transformation. If you remember when that was the hotness, um, they're spending probably double in that. They're spending 15 to 17% of their budget on technology, right? Becoming AI native, like what we're describing, it has the advantage of making fuller use of the human potential that you've got in your organization, but it also comes with a much higher investment. You're probably going to see organizations spending in excess of a quarter of their budget on technology if they're really serious about and are attempting to become an AI native or an AI first organization. So you've got to decide what is your appetite for the amount of change that you can uh, ingest at the current time. The second step is you need to very carefully evaluate whether it's your innovation cycle, like what we've been talking about right now, or it's some sort of an operational or development value stream or whatever it is. You need to fully, probably better than you do right now, understand and document that entire process from end to end. And I can tell you that when it comes to innovation, what we've struggled with for a very long time is that the development process itself has gotten more and more strictly defined in various ways. The whole process that front ends the development process, meaning going from initial inspiration or idea through to the part where we're ready to start developing, that's still really, really fuzzy. And you can't afford for it to remain fuzzy if you want to go down this road. Because if you do and you don't use these agentic workflows and interactions in that part of the process, you're going to miss half the value, at least. And the reason that you will is because you're not going to be as good as the other guy at sniffing out value creation opportunities and as important, not doing the things that you really don't need to do, right? When we get into this world of much lower friction and much lower effort, there will be a tremendous amount of temptation to build a whole lot of software really, really fast, right? Probably a lot of software that never should have been written. You need a very disciplined approach to identifying, defining, validating that this really is going to be valuable and not just someone's wild idea or something we came up with in a brainstorming session, or you will shoot yourself in the foot with this stuff. Creating a strategy. Um, Once you've evaluated and you've mapped out your current state, the state of these processes right now, and you've fully understood them in depth to the extent that you can explain them to an AI, now you want to create a strategy. So once you've got this mapping done, now you're going to start to identify the places where you think you're going to derive the most value, and then build those agentic interactions at those points in the process. Prioritize those first, um, iterate on those, tweak the hell out of them. You're going to gain a lot of knowledge and experience about how to do this with those initial ones. And then progressively, as you go, start to build out more and more of these interactions and start to connect them together. And then once you've got them connected together end to end, then you're going to try to become Pareto optimal and really start to drive efficiencies throughout the entire end-to-end process, right? But you do need a strategy. Don't say, well, we'll just throw AI models to our people and let them have at it. Um, that will create a mess that you'll have to clean up later. And you really don't want to do that. You want a definite, disciplined, defined strategy before you launch into this. And then finally, managing the change. So you're going to want to create an incremental value-centric plan, not only to bring the technology along, but also to bring your people along. And there's a side of that which is overcoming the fears of being replaced, overcoming the fear of change in general, skepticism that this is just the latest shiny object that man management's trying to impose on them, but also helping them to develop new skills, right? Software engineering is a skill. Um, and there are people that have been doing it a long time. I've been doing it a long time. And there are people who are very, very good at it. AI assisted software engineering is a related skill, but it is a different skill. And it will take more than watching some YouTube videos for your people, whether they're product managers or the actual engineers or testers or whoever they are, to learn how to relearn how to do their job assisted by AI, with the premise that, hey, it's not going to replace you, it's going to essentially lower the friction and lower the level of effort so that you can start to do the kind of job that you've always wanted to do, but we've never given you the time and the budget to do it before, right? You've got to get that reframing in their heads and then teach them the new skills that they're going to need to interact with these AIs effectively, to do not only the job they've always been doing, but the job they've always wanted to do, right? And that's pretty much all of the talking that I had to do. Questions?
We don't currently have any in the question window. We will get the copy of the recording out tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that email from me for that link. Please do scan this. What does that do for folks, Phil? Your scan code? Oh,
Yeah,
additional
yeah,
info.
that's just gonna take you to a page where you can request more information. you can do it that way, or you feel free to reach out to me directly if you've got questions, or you have something that you're struggling with right now and you'd kind of like to talk about. Feel free to hit me up. There's my LinkedIn, my phone, my email. I really appreciate you all bearing with me for 3 hours. It's a long time, I know.
You got done a little early. You're fine. I'll put Bill's LinkedIn in the chat window for everybody. Yeah, I thought this was a fantastic presentation, Bill.
All right, thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.